Good afternoon, everyone. We're not yet starting fully. We're giving Facebook and those joining us on the live stream on Facebook some time to synchronize. My name is Sandra, and I can see we're already, the number of participants is already increasing. I'm Austrian, and I'm currently sitting in Lisbon, Portugal. Where is everybody else joining us from? If you could share. With that, we will check if your chats are working. So if you could use your chat function to let us know where you're from, where you're currently sitting. Okay, Romanian based in Czech Republic, fantastic. Italian based in Germany. Okay. International crowd. More people are typing. If you're on Facebook and you're joining us live, you can also type in the comment section and it will then be transferred onto this chat here on Click Meeting. Good. One person from India joining, Venice, Italy, based in India, Oliana from Milan, Milan, Carolina from Poland. Fantastic. Good. 2 p.m. Okay, one more person is typing and they stop. Okay, good. So welcome very much to our second module of the second edition, CV for ATS and how to optimize your LinkedIn profile or how to hack the LinkedIn algorithm. About today, please do take notes. The presentation will not be made available. It will be recorded, but we do not share the presentation. It will be interactive with exercises and you can ask questions by using the chat. And if you're joining live on Facebook, feel free to use the comment section. Okay, and we have one more person from Moldova. After the webinar, for those who don't know yet, we have an open webinar participants group on LinkedIn and Facebook. So if you'd like to join and share with participants, support each other, confirm each other's skills on LinkedIn profiles, etc., feel free to request your access and Marcelina will verify if you are a registered participant. And here, having mentioned Marcelina, I'd like to say thank you to her because the second edition is happening thanks to her wanting to email with several hundred participants, and she's surely over the last 5-6 weeks sent over 1,000 emails. So thank you, Marcelina. And I'd also like to thank Anna, who is in charge of the Polish edition. And during the first edition, she has also shared more than 8 hours of in terms of webinars. With the special thanks, I also want to thank those who have contributed to our crowdfunding activity on PayPal and to Click Meeting. Click Meeting at the beginning of the pandemic decided to offer tools to companies that support companies that or people that were affected to alleviate the consequences of COVID-19. So thank you also, Click Meeting. And for those who don't know me, my name is Sandra Bichl. I started my career in 2002 as an executive search consultant based in Budapest. And for the first 5 years, I'd say I had 2 different career paths. One was executive search and the other one working in sales and marketing. In 2010, I decided to combine these 2 career paths and help candidates on the job market, which means I founded Career Angels. What does that mean for all of you? In the last years, more than 5,000 people have used our advice and services. What's most important here is, and that's the second to last bullet point of that slide, that we have developed a methodology that is based on collecting data from more than 5,000 headhunters and almost 20,000 decision makers. Because of how we work, we are able to see the actual reactions from how recruiters and potential employers react to CVs, react to cover emails, etc. So what is different, how we differentiate, how we are different from other career services companies is that we don't share our personal or professional opinion. We actually look at the sum of approximately 25,000 people. And what's also important, we don't look at what they declare that is important, but what they actually and how they actually react to. To give you an example, if you were to ask headhunters, executive search consultants in Austria, Germany, Switzerland about photo and personal details in the CV, most of them, or let's say the majority, would definitely say, you must have a CV and you must include your birth date, for example. So this is their declaration, but when we do our tests and we see what they react to, they react, if the CV is well prepared, they will still invite a good candidate to an interview, respectively of whether the birth date is included in the CV or not. And here also a comment at the beginning, whenever somebody shares career advice with you, we wholeheartedly believe that they do so with their best intentions at heart. But the majority does so from their own personal, professional opinion, experience, preference. So, which then also means they do not represent the entire market. So when you ask somebody for advice, make sure to ask them what their source of information is, their source of data. And this is a common mistake for those looking for a job, when asking about impressions, for example, on your LinkedIn profile, on your documents, ask your potential target group and not your neighbor or your peer. Your potential target group will look for something else than your peer, colleague, etc. Why is that so important, and why do we highlight that so much? Because data often contradicts experience. Among the career consultants I calculated the other day, we have over 140 or 50 years of experience, and we see every year how data contradicts our own experience, because the market currently, and it has been for several years already, is too dynamic to rely on past experience, etc. I mean, you probably will agree with me that the job market when I started in 2002 is entirely different from the job market in 2020. Right now, career advice that would have worked wonderfully 18 years ago could actually be now harmful to the people we work with. So, this series of open webinars is happening because of COVID-19. We went overnight from an employee market to an employer market, which means that there's more candidates than recruitment processes. Once we realized that, we decided to immediately prepare a job search and career management guide. And I checked, we're still the only career services / outplacement company that offers these kinds of our services in open webinars completely free of charge. Therefore, we are also doing our crowdfunding via PayPal. This is the second edition. We did hear a couple of times during the first edition, why do you do that? Other companies charge for that. It's the right thing to do. If we have the know-how, why sit on it? We very much believe in sharing. So, when we look at the data, what effects does COVID-19 have? We selected a KPI that we could track. That KPI are published job ads on LinkedIn. It is not a perfect KPI because the fact that job ads disappear from LinkedIn doesn't necessarily have to be because the recruitment process was cancelled. It could be that part of the companies decided to move to more cost-effective solutions that are usually local job boards. Having said that, even if they move to cheaper solutions, it is also an indication of what's going on. So we started tracking published job ads on LinkedIn in week 13. This is when it was clear that the pandemic would be temporarily permanent, and lockdown was happening in a lot of European countries. So when we look at week 13 versus week 22, which started yesterday, we can see a decrease in job ads of 30%. That's 1.2 million in absolute numbers. And this is for 18 countries. Here it is sorted. We then decided 2 weeks later to extend it to 36 countries, among others, thanks to the requests of our participants of the open webinars. And here you can see when we look from week 21 to week 22, we have more black than red numbers. So I'm the bearer of good news. It is getting better. We can see an increase. Here you have it sorted: Slovakia plus 18% week to week, Czechia plus 14%, Iceland plus 14%, Portugal plus 10%. So it is getting better. There's something happening. There's movement again on the job market. And here the difference, the 2 week difference, when we look at the 36 countries from week 20 to 22, we have an overall increase of plus 3.2%. One comment in the chat: it would be nice to see this research for executive jobs. Yes, it would be. Unfortunately, we don't have a reliable way to actually track them correctly. Good. So if it doesn't matter if it's a dynamic market as it is now, or if you're overall thinking about changing your job when times are quiet and, let's say, more or less predictable, it is always good to have a job search strategy. In the job search strategy, we look at 4 steps. Step number 1, define your goal as precise and realistically as possible. And in line with your goal, prepare your unique selling proposition. In other words, why should a company hire you and not the other 1,000 or 500 or 3,000 candidates? We covered that in module 1. Today, module 2, once we have worked on a unique selling proposition, how do you show that in the CV? And here it does say you need 2 CVs, one for the human, one for the robot. And then step number 3 also means having an optimized LinkedIn profile. Module 3 will be the 4th step in the job search strategy, meaning to use all 4 channels. And module 4 is about interviewing and with an emphasis on how to interview online, which is to a certain extent more difficult than interviewing in person. So, CV. Question to those present and watching us on Facebook Live. What is the goal of a CV? It might seem like an obvious question, but I actually want to explore that with you right now. What is the goal of the CV? To get an interview. Okay. The goal of the CV, let's see. 6 people are typing, so I'll wait to communicate who you are. And I also, in the meantime, so somebody joining from Perugia and Hungary, welcome. To get notice for obtaining the first discussion, so to have an interview, to check the boxes, basic requirements for the job, bridge between us and the recruiter, a detailed business card, to look better than others, showing your career path. Okay. Now, usually when I ask the question, I actually hear the answer, the goal of the CV is to get a job, which none of you said. Maybe some thoughts. The goal of the CV is to get an interview, not a job. And it's like in a video game where you unlock certain levels. So if you have a good subject line in an email address, the recipient clicks on the email or decides to delete it. If the cover email is then well written, somebody will click on the CV or delete it. The goal of the CV is to get a screening call or be deleted. After the screening call, interview or delete. First round of interview, the goal is to get a second interview. The second interview would then see offer, maybe sometimes it leads to more rounds, but you get the idea. So when looking at job search and an application process, we look really at every single element that influences the decision whether to click on the email or delete, read it or delete, CV or delete, etc. The rules when talking about CVs, it is, should be, has to be, must be written for the audience in mind. In other words, if you realized when doing the first module that there are two different career paths for you, or two different industries, or two different roles, you would have two different target audience, meaning you would need two different CVs. It should not have any mistakes, and you will see why soon. One reason is the human that reads the CV that could not be very mistake resistant. There are perfectionists, or there are actually also recruiters who say, if I receive a bad CV with spelling mistakes, bad CVs means bad candidate. And this could be a subjective human impression, but then when we look at applicant tracking systems and machines that scan the document, a machine doesn't understand spelling mistakes. So if you have misspelled a keyword, you will not be flagged or tagged as a potentially good candidate. So no mistakes for the human as a subjective quality kind of perspective, but there's zero tolerance for ATS when it comes to mistakes. What's also important to remember that part of the interview already happens on the screen. With more and more qualified candidates, imagine that you are a recruiter, you posted a job ad on LinkedIn, and you have 400, 500, 600 candidates, out of which 50 have sent their CV that has no mistakes, well prepared, out of which 25 present the most important information right there and then, which means I have 20 easy candidates where I already have all the information in front of me. And with the other 30, I actually have to start calling them. Yes, it's the job of a recruiter to do that, but recruiters very often work on 10, 15, 20 recruitment processes at the same time. They're paid upon success, so they will go with the easy candidates. And with that in mind, part of the interview happens already on the screen. So how you prepare the CV is important. Now, as I said, we do collect a lot of data. One of them is the efficiency of the job hunting channels. There are 4 channels that you can use to create job offers, or at least interviews and interest on a job market. One is speculative introduction, meaning contacting your potential boss directly. Networking, executive search firms, and job ads. Now, I want to do this interactively with you. If you decide to contact your potential boss directly, do you need a CV that is prepared for human or applicant tracking system software? Okay, this is pretty clear, human potential boss. What about networking? That's also pretty clear. Networking human is a source of information, can introduce you, etc. When it comes to executive search firms or in general recruitment companies, what kind of CV do you need here, human or ATS? Okay, we have one that says human. Okay. Anybody here has been asked to upload your CV to a database in the last weeks or even years? Yes, database means potential for software. So with the recruitment companies, we need actually both. We need human, unless you're specifically asked to upload it to a database, then you also need an ATS version of your CV. And job ads, we have both. And I'll show you today how to recognize if there is a software behind it, what kind of software, and how to optimize for that. I speak a lot about recruiters, and their job is really not an easy one. Recruiters do receive approximately 50, on an average day, 50 unsolicited CVs per day, meaning they receive CVs they have not asked for themselves. So those are proactive candidates. That's 250 CVs per week, 1,000 CVs per month, 12,000 CVs per year. That is a lot of CVs for one human being. On top of that, they do have 5 to 15, sometimes 20 ongoing parallel recruitment projects and KPIs. There are recruitment companies that are managed by KPIs, meaning that the recruitment consultants have 5 business development calls to do, 2 client meetings, etc., etc. So it's a very high pressure environment. So grasping their attention is important. And nowadays, because of COVID-19, they're obviously flooded with CVs. So grabbing their attention is important. I will show you now a couple of CV examples. And I'd like you to look at those CVs from a recruiter's perspective. Now, this is a recruiter. It's 4 p.m. They've already had probably 7 interviews and 3 client calls and 50 emails. And then they receive a CV they decide to open. And my question with the CVs, I will walk you through the first one, but in the following examples, I'd like you to spot the mistakes. And I want your impression, what you think this person could, what kind of position you would recommend this person to, etc. So, examples. All of these examples are real CVs we have received for review. All the details have been anonymized or substituted. So here we have Barbara Smith. Question to you, what position, if you were a recruiter, what position would you recommend this person for at first glance? Junior. At age 43, she should have an intro. Absolutely. No summary, education before employment. Okay, I can already tell that you're looking at the mistakes. So yes, we don't really know. As a recruiter, I would have no idea. Maybe something with engineering, 43 engineering. And here, what are the fact that Smith is in all caps, I know that this is probably somebody from France. And we have the age there, we have number of children, driving license. These are all things that shouldn't be, at least not there in the CV. And as you've correctly pointed out, education is before employment history. And if you pay attention, there is, in the second section, it says languages and IT, but only the languages aren't listed. Plus, and this is a common mistake, it does not say, the languages do not mention their own language. I do assume that if it's a French nationality and they've had a French education, that they are a French speaker. Now, this is a common, especially if you think that your CV could be forwarded to headquarters to somebody, they will not recognize, looking at your last name or even your address in today's international job market, they will not know what your native language is. So make sure that you do include your own native language in the CV. Okay, second example. What would you recommend? What role would you recommend this person for? Manager. Okay, it does say experienced manager. Manager, finance manager. Okay, what mistakes do you see on the CV? Let's look for mistakes together. It's a wall of text, which per se is not a mistake. Text is good, but because it's a wall, what I need is to have the keywords bolded. There is inconsistent inconsistent formatting. The introduction might be too long. Nothing stands out exactly. So when somebody because the eye on the screen doesn't read, it scans information. So here, what I see is John Smith, ATSIAI MBA, so that tells me finance, probably manager. And then I'd jump right to position, which I don't see here yet. Okay, next. Example number 3. And again, all these examples are real. What would you recommend this? What role could this person have? Something with communication, decision maker, public relations manager, maybe. And this is a perfect example of why it's so important to send your CV in .pdf. Everybody works on a different Word text editor. Some work on Mac, some on some old Windows, some on new Windows, some have Linux and OpenOffice. And this is somebody who works in communication, in public relations. And the first impression I have from that person would be everything is completely scrambled up. Okay, next example. What mistakes do you see in this CV? No name. Career goal is not needed. He's already applying to a job. That's correct. Now, this is, for example, when it comes to the career goal, this is something where you will find recruiters and HR professionals who will tell you, include the career goal in your CV. And this is approximately 5% of HR professionals and recruiters who say that. The career goal should definitely be in the cover email, and it's inferred by the position you're applying to. And if this is saved in a database and somebody opens it up after 2-3 years, it's completely irrelevant. There's somebody didn't want to name the company they actually worked for. It does say it says career goal and then my key strength, etc. But again, nothing is bolded. It starts by Austrian nationality, age 43, married, etc., etc. Too many pieces of info. That's irrelevant, unless it is relevant to have a work permit, and then it's okay to mention. But there are details that can be mentioned at the very end of the CV. Okay. This is, again, a very good example of how not to prepare a CV. The light blue box, that's where the photo was. Yeah. Some of you are already typing, lots of empty space, exactly. First look without info, skip. I would then start scrolling, trying to interpret. So there's a lot of missed opportunity here. And please do not start with the personal data. It definitely, the tendency in the European Union and internationally is to not include any type of details that could be base for discrimination. GDPR is getting more, more and more companies start to finally understand how GDPR should be used and applied. And it does say very clearly that you should only collect information from candidates that influence the hiring decision. April 12, 1969, the birth date is not a basis of, no. Okay, good, next. Again, one of my favorites, this is somebody who says they do customer experience, that they are experienced in customer experience. I am a customer, I read your document, and it's completely illegible. Why? Because it was sent in a .doc format. There's no profile summary. You can see that's a big no. What about this CV? Question to you. Okay, at first sight, we can see it's HR. What makes this person unique? What would you say? Okay, somebody says too big font. What is this? What is the uniqueness of this HR and finance director? Here it says he puts achievements first. I cannot see the whole document. Should it be like this? I don't know if you have that as well, but whenever I receive a 2-column CV and there's been research done on that, my eyes don't really know whether to read on the left or on the right. So what you definitely want to avoid is 2-column CVs. It is a trend, especially with portals that offer templates, CV templates. It might look nice, but it's entirely impractical. Plus, applicant tracking systems have a really hard time reading those. So a big no to 2-column CVs. Okay, so Carolina says, I cannot see the whole document. Should it be like this? Yes. When somebody opens your CV, you see the reader usually sees the first half page, and this is why you're seeing the first half page. Here a question, what if only the contact details are in the left column of the template? You would probably waste a lot of space, because if you have an entire column only for contact details, you're missing, 4 centimeters of space. So contact details are usually best put up in the header, and we'll look at that. I'll show you good examples as well, not only the bad ones. Okay, John Kowalski. Perfect example again of how not to send open formats but PDFs. It starts with date of birth, bad composition, it is chaotic, it has an attempt of a profile summary which is 3 lines, it starts with qualification and not with the profile summary, etc., etc. So again, that's a no. Here, CV number 9. What could be better done in this CV? What are areas of improvement here? The introduction is missing, yes. So the profile summary is missing. Here's one comment that the name of the company is missing. Well, it is the Chamber of Commerce. This might be too long. Carolina says, without columns, the CV might be too long. Actually, the research shows that 2-column CVs take up more space than 1-column CVs. Okay, good. So one other thing that can be done here, at first sight, from a recruiter's perspective, I see this person has had 3 jobs in 5 years, changes too often, next. I want somebody who wants to commit for at least 3 to 4 years. Only when I start reading the CV, I see, oh, actually, Chamber of Commerce, oh, that might be the same company. So I will show you later on how batching of positions within a company could be a good solution in this case. And no unique numbers and descriptions of each job, correct. So the successes were missing. What about this CV? That's the last one in terms of bad examples. What do you think about this CV? Overall impressions? Yes, no, why? Too much space just for the name and the contact details, correct. If you want an exact number, we found that the best header is maximum 4 centimeters. Much better, too long summary, 5 points would be enough, but he has numbers. There are some numbers, but it is in a light gray. So it would be much more legible if it was a slightly darker color and the most important bits bold. Okay, good. Let's look at before and after examples. Remember Barbara Smith, the French from the beginning? This is a before and after example of how the same person can be perceived completely differently. So here, if I were to ask you, what role would you recommend this person to? What would it be? If you now were the recruiter, general manager, which industry? Or sales senior manager? And do we see he builds hotels, so in construction, exactly. And here we see the before and after. This is exactly the same candidate. Nothing has changed in terms of their competencies. Nothing has changed in their experience, but we showed information in a completely different way. What about this person? Now, what role would you recommend this candidate for? Finance manager. What is their unique selling proposition? Why is this candidate potentially different than other candidates? Efficiency, cost reduction, worked in many countries, international experience. And if somebody wants to find it, we also have the keywords innovation. Exactly. And this was the before and after. Same person, same finance manager. Here we have a question. Isn't it too much presentation before showing his experience? Now, you only get about 7 to 15 seconds of attention from a recruiter that is flooded by CVs. And it is about the first impression. It is about piquing interest. So if a recruiter looks for, because this person would only contact a recruiter who recruits finance managers. There is a specialization for finance professionals. So if they open the CV and see finance manager, okay, this is already a qualified candidate for me. I see the countries, I scan the CV, I see audits, countries, so this is international. Tariffs, increased investments, increased efficiency, Innovation, okay, I have a client where he could fit. This has to be very, very quick. So bolding keywords is a must in the profile summary. Otherwise, the human eye will skip the text and jump right to the professional experience. Now we have a question, but then in the professional experience, will he repeat the achievements? The way to think about the profile summary is it's like a trailer to the movie. A trailer consists of the scenes of the entire movie. So yes, some of this information will be repeated, but the level of detail is much longer below. And there are many more achievements. So when we work on CVs, we make sure that we have at least 3 to 5 achievements per position, project, etc. And we only include the most important bits in the profile summary. Plus, it is a very easy way of adapting the CV to the reader. Because here what we have is the full list of let's say bullet points and type of information that we want to show. Let's say John Smith applies to a company that is known for not being that innovative and they're not interested in innovation. Then he can take out all those 3 bullet points about innovation, and then I have a shorter summary. So this is the way to think about it, is also building blocks and bullet points that you can delete, shuffle up and down, depending on who you send your CV to. Okay, good. Next. Here we have Anna Williams. What role would you see Anna Williams in? At first sight, what is she good at? What's the first things that you see? You're welcome. Business development, international sales. Exactly. BD and sales. And what's her potential unique selling proposition? Potential unique selling proposition. What is she different in than others? Not every sales and business development professional, for example, is good in crisis management. And this, you can see here, we were a bit more restrictive when it comes to anonymizing the CV, because it was referring in, among others, to the coronavirus and the response to that. So here, and again, it's exactly the same person, same experience, same successes, but a completely different way of presenting that information. Okay, here we have an example, Jessica Johnson, and I'll skip right to before and after. On the left, that is a very, that is a template that is used very often in the UK and the US. There is a very popular template apparently, and all the CVs look the same. So this is one thing. The other one on the left, it is generic blah blah. On the right, I have increase in sales, increase in channel sales, more than 70%. I have countries, I have numbers. So now, okay, this could be really a salesperson for export sales, for example. Okay. And this is the last one. This is David Johnson. We saw him before and after. So here, as you have mentioned yourselves, the header is much smaller, and I can then better space usage. Yes, exactly. I can see this person has had P&L responsibility, 650 FTE, sales, marketing, people. So I already know, okay, what box to put that person into, and whether this person is relevant for my recruitment processes or for my organization. Okay, good. So summarizing the most important points. In the header, maximum 4 centimeters. If it's relevant, you can add the photo, and we'll discuss photos in a bit. Contact details in the header. Then we have the profile summary, which should at first sight demonstrate your unique selling proposition. or at least what box to put you into. Then we have experience, then education, and then additional information. First step, when you prepare your CV, focus on the content. So ask yourself, looking at my experience, what is relevant for my target group? What is obvious? What is not obvious? Especially for those who have spent a lot of time in a company or in their own industry. Candidates very often make certain assumptions to, oh, but it's obvious what an internal something does. And then it's obvious to you, but it might not be obvious to those who rarely recruit positions like that. So challenge the content you already have by asking yourselves, what is obvious? What is not obvious? What is not concrete enough? Is there maybe too much detail? There are still things that need to be mentioned during the interview. I did mention batching of entries. That helps us avoid looking like a jumper, especially if it happens every 1 or 2 years. The way you do that, or to show progress and continuous promotions. And before I show you the example, it's important to not overdo it, especially if you've been with a company more than 7 to 10 years. And here are the examples. So example number 1, we have somebody who's been with a company since August 2013, and you can see it on the progression. So instead of having 4 entries on the CV, I have 1 entry, and I can see senior manager, head of, regional head of, global head of, and the changes happen every year to 2 years. So I went from, oh my God, this person changes every 2 years, no, to, oh, look, somebody is really good and gets promoted. Or in the second example, we first start with the company and then we have the positions, just to show you 2 different approaches to that. When it comes to graphics and layouts, pages 1 to 3, even in the United States, you will now see that more and more people say it's okay to have 2 pages. It is usually up to 2 pages unless you have more than 10 years of experience. Then it's also okay to have 3 CV pages. Photo, it depends. In the US, it is a definite no because of their anti-discrimination laws. And the way we approach photo advice is very practical. If the photo helps you, use it. If it doesn't help you, don't use it. And by help, I mean if it's a good quality photo. If, for example, the photo is about showing positive energy or your caliber or your demeanor, then by all means add it. But if it's adding a photo just because somebody said that you should add it and you cut out a photo, your favorite photo of a wedding of a friend, no, then it's a definite no. So if photo, then only a professional good photo. And here professional good photo means dress up as you would for an important interview and take the photo, and that's what you then add to the CV. A photo on the CV also helps develop a color scheme for the documents. So if, for example, somebody wears a blue tie, you can use then the color blue from the tie in the titles of the CV, for example. Usually, however, we recommend to stick to 2 to 3 maximum colors, 1 to 2 fonts, and 1 column as discussed. When it comes to colors and fonts, please keep it simple and professional. It is an opportunity to positively stand out. It does add personality and energy. And I've gotten ahead of myself. I do see a slide on graphics with photos. So good quality photo, neutral background. Don't take photos or don't use photos where you're outside. Dressed as if you were to go to an important interview, recognizable in real life, especially ladies like overdoing it with Photoshop when they have a professional photo shooting. This is not for a magazine. This is for you to be authentic, for you to come across as somebody natural. So when they actually meet you in person, it's not open the door in the conference room like, okay, did I choose the right conference room, because you're not recognizable. Don't cut out photos from your favorite weddings, parties, etc. And last but not least, please proofread your CV. Here, please do give the CV to your peers and colleagues and neighbors to say, please find all possible mistakes. Especially if you've spent a lot of time on your document, your brain does not register mistakes anymore. So here's some proofreading tips before you give it to your friends and family. Read the CV from bottom to top, and ideally then from right to left. So the inverse, give it to somebody else, use spell check, check and double check. And here you have a list of all the things you might be checking: margins, spaces, typos, dashes, consistency in how you write repetitive elements like the positions, company names, bullet points, beginning and end of sentences, etc. And last but not least, GDPR. So the thing with GDPR, what to include, what not to include, how does it work? GDPR forces all companies to obtain proper consent from candidates that apply in the European Union. Important, GDPR does not define a correct and unified clause or consent form. So you need to read each company's requirements very carefully when applying directly to job ads. From a candidate's point of view, it is better and more secure to have a clause directly on your CV than to not have one at all. This applies to all countries in the European Union. Important, GDPR is company-driven and not candidate-driven. It is also correct if the candidate does not include anything on the CV unless it is specifically requested in the job ad. So to be on the safe side, we recommend everyone to have a clause. So summarizing, you can have no clause at all, and that would be correct unless you apply to a job ad that states, please include the clause because if you don't and the HR department was well trained, your application will immediately be deleted. A general clause would be, I agree to the processing of my personal data for current and future recruitment purposes. And if you add that to the CV, you are safe. You can use general but dedicated, so you can be even more purposeful and say, I agree to the processing of my personal data by Coca-Cola for current and future recruitment purposes. Or that's for, if applicable, copy pasted from the job ad. Good. My next stop are CVs for applicant tracking systems. Before I get there, I'd like to check in with you. Do you have any questions at this point when it comes to CVs for humans? Or have I exhausted the topic? Okay, I can see somebody's typing, so there might be a question. If you're on Facebook, please feel free to ask your question in the comment section. We have a question. Do we get the presentation after the webinar? As mentioned, you probably joined in minute 5 or later. We are not sharing the presentation, but the recording of the webinar. Anka asks about batching the entries. Do we mention all roles with one company and then the general description or description per each role within the same company? About the batching of entries, do we mention all roles with one company and then the general description or description per each role within the same company? Okay, Anka's question is a good question, and as with most of my answers, it will say it depends. If, for example, it was sales assistant, junior, key account, etc., then you can skip the description of the early roles because it's kind of clear what a key account manager does. Linear growth, you can first have the batched entries, and then in the description divide it up visually to say as general manager, and then have description, then as finance director and the description. And with each description, you include the selected successes and projects. Okay, good. Now moving on, CV for applicant tracking systems. You're welcome. So why do companies use applicant tracking systems? Having mentioned and described a day of a recruiter, if a person receives 12,000 CVs per year that are not even solicited, and this is a regular recruiter, there are recruitment companies that are even more busy. It simply saves time and money when it comes to the research says 30 to 50 hours on physical application browsing. In the US, it helps prevent lawsuits when it comes to discrimination. Some AI tools have reported a 20 to 100% increase in gender, ethnic, and socioeconomic diversity of hires. So that's an important point. And of course, applicant tracking system means I can track all of my applicants in one system, so I know, has a candidate, are they coming back, are they reapplying, have they been in a recruitment process successfully, unsuccessfully. So I basically have a master system to track all the candidates. Here's some more data. This is from topresume.com. On average, a corporate job posting receives 250 applications. Of those 250 applications, 4 to 6 will be contacted for an interview, which means 95% of large organizations use ATS as part of the recruitment process. Big companies receive about 50,000 to 75,000 resumes each week. That could be, for example, like Amazon. And 75% of resumes will never be seen by human eyes. And I'll show you how that works in detail in a bit. Here's a list of applicant tracking systems used by Fortune 500. The most used one is Taleo, followed by Workday, SuccessFactors by SAP, SAP, IBM Kinexa Brassring, etc. How do you know? Here's another top 10 ranking prepared by, you have on the right Fortune 500 JobScan database, etc. One way or another, what you see, Taleo is the one used most commonly. And here, so when you have a job ad and it says click apply, it very often then redirects you to a different website to upload the CV. And when you look at the link, so you have company, what ATS, and then sample job listing URL, you can see 3M uses Workday, Allstate uses ICIMS, Clorox, ADP, Coca-Cola, Workday, Microsoft, they have their own thing, surprise. Nike uses Taleo, etc. So the link will then tell you what kind of applicant, if there is an applicant tracking system and what kind is used. And if you want to be super diligent, you can then Google that ATS and find ATS specific tips for your CV. Okay, now how did we come up with how ATS CVs should look like? So first I'll walk you through that table. So we have 4 types of CVs. We have the old CV, we have the for human CV, optimized, and JobScan. Old CV means this was a CV that was submitted by a client to us, and on a scale from 1 to 10, it would have received a 2 for humans in terms of quality. Then we worked on that CV. So the for human CV is our On a scale from 1 to 10, we would have given that CV, let's say, a 9. Optimized means we had implemented all applicant system tips and tricks that were recommended. And JobScan is the website that simulates the Taleo algorithm. And then we put all 4 CVs through so-called CV scanners. The CV scanners are the websites you see on the very left. It's the first column. So you see VMOC, ResCore, Resume Worded, Skill Roads, and Live Career. So what's worth noticing here? Here, for example, we see that for human CV that would have received a solid 8 or 9 is assessed worse than the before bad version for the human. In other words, what's good for one isn't necessarily good for the other. It's a completely different approach. Livecareer.com, don't use that website. It doesn't matter what you put in, what you upload. You will always have 8 critical errors. This is more about selling their services. And here, when you look at the difference between Optimized and JobScan, if you work and use JobScan as a guidance to optimize your CV, you are good to go. Okay, so how to use JobScan? It basically mimics a version of, or mimics a Taleo applicant system. So on the left, you paste your resume or you upload it, and on the right, you paste the job description that you applied to. And then you click scan, and then it tells you, based on your current CV, the system would match you at 28%. Now, here's the thing. We did that with our client CV, and had a human received that CV, they would have seen she's a really solid candidate and should be definitely interviewed. But ATS said no. As we already saw before, what's good for ATS is not necessarily good for human, and vice versa. So let me show you the process. So on the very left, we have the initial match of 26%. And then we added 5 lines, which is yellow. And all of a sudden, a 26% match doubled to 52%. And again, it's 5 lines. With the 77, we added another 5 lines. And with the 85% match, it's in total, I think, 13 or 15 lines. Same candidate, same competencies, no lies. And we adapted the format a bit. And we went from a 26% match to an 85% match. This person definitely will be recommended for an interview by a human. What the applicant tracking system basically does is to compare keywords from the job description and the CV, and sometimes something else that is maybe added in the background in terms of looking for. Here we have a question in the chat. So we take a good CV for human and we add some key lines for the ATS. Correct. If only it were that simple. Unfortunately, you're thinking the right direction, but it's unfortunately a bit more complicated. So the insights, the best CVs for ATS are chronological with a skills and competency section. The contact details, and these are the differences, the big differences that do make a difference. Contact details, phone number without spaces, add your postal code, city and country, and email address without an active link. ATS don't like active links. So yes, we need to go into optimization mode. Some might say, why would the phone number not have spaces? Because if you had a space, the ATS might think it is a date and interpret that line in your CV as maybe there was a job. So we reduce risks of misinterpreting your data by a bot. Format .pdf unless it asks for a doc, again for the scrambling, etc. No information in the footer or in the header. Very often the ATS can't read information that is in a text box or not part of the actual document, which then also means no tables, no text boxes, no graphics, no images, no columns. Length, it doesn't matter, or some say maximum 2 pages. However, the majority, it doesn't really matter because we go for keywords. Font, traditional black, bolding is okay. Bullets, only standard bullets. Language, 0 mistakes. They do prefer active verbs, however, and I'll show you that in a bit. It is more about, again, the matching of the language in the job ad and the CV. Use long and short. So everybody would know what an MBA is, but if the job description or any future job descriptions that you could potentially be matched against would say Master of Business Administration, then they will not find the MBA. So if something can be written out or shortened, add the abbreviations and the long versions. And this is what I mentioned just before, exact words from job ad. So if the job ad says responsible for recruiting, selecting, orienting, training, don't write recruitment, selection, creation, etc. So it really looks for the exact matches. If you find a recording of one of my webinars or trainings from about 2 or 3 years ago, we ourselves would recommend to copy paste the job ad in white font. In the meantime, the applicant tracking systems have become smarter. So adding additional text in white font will not work. Don't repeat keywords at the end. Don't copy paste the job ad. Yes, what does work? Add keywords throughout the CV. Add competency section at the end. And if everybody here today will receive a step-by-step guide on how to prepare a CV that ATS systems like. If you are live streaming or watching the recording and you want access to that, it is really a to-do and checklist. Have I deleted all tables? Have I deleted this? Is the format correct? Etc. etc. So if you want that, send an email to webinar@careerangels.eu and Marcelina will then send that file to you. Questions before I start with Hack LinkedIn? I know it's a lot. Okay. First comment, looking forward to hacking LinkedIn. Good. Okay, an eye-opener, thank you. You're very welcome. Preparing, understanding the applicant track. We spend about 2-3 months on understanding the applicant tracking system and coming up with an easy way to transform the human CV into an ATS version. Those two documents don't look anything alike. One is really with a photo, with a color scheme, with unique selling proposition, but the bot doesn't care for that. The bot wants data and compare, so it is a different target group basically. So we need 2 CVs currently. Okay, so I haven't even started the section hacking LinkedIn and have already a comment. LinkedIn matches me with roles that really don't suit my experience and vice versa. And it might be that now you'll discover why that happens. So I'm moving on to the third part of today, how to hack LinkedIn. From a headhunter's perspective, so far, and I do have to say, in the past, very often sources of generating candidates were the database of the recruitment company, their own network, recommendations of current and former candidates, LinkedIn, Golden Linking, Twitter, nowadays even Facebook, and attending industry events. And I'm now obviously oversimplifying, but in very brief terms, this has been substituted by LinkedIn. There are recruitment companies, one or two executive search companies that will, if you send them your CV, they will say, thank you very much. Because of GDPR, we have stopped having a database. Please find one of our consultants on LinkedIn. Own contacts, the majority of professionals is already on LinkedIn. So if they have a contact base, it's on LinkedIn. Recommendations, you can ask for recommendations on LinkedIn by messaging your candidate and saying, hey, do you know somebody who could fit that profile, etc. And again, I got ahead of myself. I described the slide that was already on. I described the slide that wasn't visible yet. And industry events, they, well, for obvious reasons, they're not happening now, but lots happening online. Okay, so when it comes to the recruitment steps, very often recruiters or a researcher's path starts with searching and understanding how big of a candidate pool I have. So for example, here, if somebody were to look for a finance director in Berlin, Germany, they'd have to click through over 6,000 profiles. And if I add to that CFO, more than 2,000. So they would have over 8,000 candidates and LinkedIn profiles to click through. So then they go down and say, okay, I don't want to look through 8,000 candidates. Then they can go through, for example, current companies, past companies. In executive search, very often there is a list called target list where prior to the start of the recruitment process, the very concrete companies are selected where the client wants the headhunter to approach candidates from, because they know people who have worked at Vodafone have a good something. So then they can go through current or past, or has somebody worked at those companies from the target list. I can then filter candidates through industries, etc. What I'm trying to say here, put yourselves into the shoes of the recruiter. In other words, what do they need to be clicking on? What filters do you want them to click on to be able to find you? We also have other filters, profile languages, the schools, interests, type of services, etc. Okay, so filters are there to narrow down the candidate pool. Obviously one way of filtering down candidate pool is to add a keyword next to finance director. For example, finance director M&A. So why should I click on 1,000 profiles and contact them if I already have good and competent candidates in the first 50? What does that mean? You want to make sure that you are in the first pages of the search results and not towards the end. So preparing that thinking process is important. What is visible next to the results is your photo and your tagline. So photo here is important again, and what it says in your tagline, because it does decide whether somebody clicks or says next. If a profile doesn't have a lot of information, so if it's frugal, it raises a lot of question marks. So again, if I have to click through 100 candidates and 20 have full, relatively nice profiles, and with the other 80, I have to request a CV and follow up and track them down, it's a lot of work. It should be the work of the recruiter, but we've already discussed what tough of a day they have. And if there is a researcher involved in the recruitment process, they sometimes have to request several hundred CVs every day. The opposite is if there are too many details, then the recruiter can falsely make certain assumptions and say, too much information, I don't need that kind of profile. So it's important to balance between too much information and not enough information. The researcher sees those profiles which the algorithm suggests as the first ones. Which then means that we create our profile for two different target groups. One is the human and the other one is the LinkedIn algorithm. So the human could be the headhunter, the decision maker, the hiring manager. And the LinkedIn algorithm here, we need to look at keywords and skills. I have a question in the chat, too much information in what sense? For example, there are candidates or professionals who add sensitive information in the profile. Sensitive information, budgets, increases, that is not the point of, it's okay to say increased sales, but increased sales by 7.2% while the market was minus 2%, that's too detailed. So for LinkedIn, we don't want to copy paste the CV. We select parts of the CV to put onto the LinkedIn profile. The recruiter should have a reason to get in touch with us to invite us to the recruitment process. Researcher has to submit the list of candidates. And here the details decide about whether the candidate is in or out. So those could then be the typos, photo, quality of the profile summary, etc. There is a paid version of LinkedIn. It's called LinkedIn Recruiter. It is expensive. It's $120 per month. And a lot of companies, especially the small recruitment companies, can't afford all 5 recruiters or all 10 team members to have one. So what they do is they don't have an account, and then it's important because then they would search for candidates traditionally through their network and the search result based on the network, which then means that if you are if you're a candidate who's actively looking for a job, you need a big network to increase the chances of being in somebody's search results. And this is one of the reasons why we decided to set up a group on LinkedIn and Facebook for open webinar participants. If you see others in the group, reach out to them, say, listen, we are attending the same open webinar program. Can we connect? It will increase your chances of being in in a recruiter's or hiring manager search results. So use the power of the group. The other option, especially with smaller companies, that they have one paid account for the whole company, meaning that, for example, 5 or 10 people access one account. So they have lots of messages in the inbox, and if you are not fast as a candidate in terms of submitting the CV, the LinkedIn inbox is not a good inbox. It has a lot of flaws, which means if you are an hour late or 2 hours late, you are not within the top 10 messages, but like message number 79. And then again, they won't see you. Okay. Therefore, a good optimized profile is the key to success. So ask yourselves, what criteria, what filters do I want the headhunter to click on to be found? What are the keywords? And you want to have a correct profile. So what is a correct profile? And I'd like now to go through the whole section one by one. This is a real example. I've chosen at random somebody from the US. So we'll go from top to bottom. Number one, we have the link to your LinkedIn profile, which should be personalized. So it shouldn't say Martin Denman 9ABB1919/. It should say Martin Denman. You personalize that in the public profile settings part of your own LinkedIn profile. If you can obviously add that link to your signature, to your email signature, to your CV. But if you add it, make sure it is personalized. If it's not, it shows that you're probably not that familiar with the tool. If you work in HR, IT, something with technology, marketing, communications, it is expected of you to understand the tool and have it personalized. So definitely do that. Then we have the tagline, Director of Finance at AT Kearney, which is, this gentleman has an automatic tagline. He has not personalized it himself. Question to those present here. What would you say is a good tagline? What do you think? What is a good tagline? Or if it's easier for you, what is a bad tagline? Here we have one comment. It shall include more details, maybe unique selling proposition. Good tagline, international finance executive. Automatic for the algorithm, question mark. Geoffroy. Good tagline would be explaining what your next step is. Somebody says it should not be your position. Maybe add your studies, so add a title. Bad one is the one created by LinkedIn, question mark. See, there is no consensus. The tagline is actually a very tricky thing to go about. And the tagline will very much depend on your current situation and on your target group. So a good tagline, I can give you one example of a bad one. A bad tagline would be, I'm looking for a job. This means I'm desperate. There are so many other ways of communicating to your network that you're looking for a job, be it by reaching out to them personally. So looking for a job, there's no recruiter in this world who sits down in the morning with a cup of coffee, says, oh, let's help those candidates who are currently looking for a job. No. So if you have a job, or looking for new opportunities, exactly. If you have a job and if you have a job and the new job would not really be in line, or you don't want your current employer to learn about it, you need to be more careful. So it has to be a little bit more enigmatic, and you can't jump out with a unique selling proposition. So the tagline is admittedly something super tricky. The easiest way out is to actually put there the label, the box that you want the recruiter to put you into. So let's say Director of Finance, definitely, comma, M&A, or slash private equity or something. So it's good to have the position if it represents what you want to do next, and then something that an additional keyword. Here I have a comment. I was very selective to accept connection requests on LinkedIn, as I was only adding the people that I knew personally. However, to extend your network, maybe it is smarter not to be very selective then. To comment on that, there is a thing about quality versus quantity. If you're looking for a job, I'd say quantity is more important. And then in a couple of months, once you have a new job, you can then go through your network and, let's say, do some spring cleaning and go for quality. This is also a tip for those here, for the participants. If you decide to reach out and grow your network with the participants of the open webinars, always add a note to your invitation. So add a note saying, hey, open webinars, smiley, some whatever, just that they know, that so they know the reason. Otherwise it might seem very random that somebody, we had a Romanian in Czech sending a contact request to somebody, what did we have today, Italian sitting in Germany, for example. Here's a question: should the titles be included after the name, for example, MSc, PhD, MBA, CFA, etc.? Here, my answer is it depends, and this depends on your target group. If you are, for example, in the pharma industry and you are a medical doctor that works in business, yes, why not? If you are in Austria, Germany, Switzerland, in the German-speaking markets, and the title is relevant, then why not? So again, the title, you need to remember the target group, how you want to position yourself and what's important to them. Okay, then we have, we've partly started talking about that, where you're based, and then the number of connections. The number of connections on LinkedIn, the absolute minimum is 500 plus. So this gentleman has 230. 500 plus is a minimum. Beyond that, LinkedIn doesn't show you the details. You'd have to go onto the profile to actually see how many connections somebody actually has or how many followers they have. Although 500 plus is the minimum, if you're an active job seeker with 15 to 20 years of experience, I'd probably go for 500 to 1,000. Okay, then we have the background photo. Here we have it neutral, meaning Martin has decided not to upload a background photo, which is absolutely fine. A bad background photo would be anything that has nothing to do with you as a professional. For some reason, there is a group of LinkedIn users that love leaves, forests, leaves, poems, bad or low quality Einstein photos, for example. So anything completely random, please don't edit. Some companies have opted for a consistent employer branding strategy, where, for example, AT Kearney would have join AT something, so everybody has the same background photo. How do you add it? You go into your profile, into the editing mode of your profile, and the same way as you would click on your photo to exchange it, that's the same way how you click on your background. Can you please show an example of a good one? I actually don't have an example of a good one in the presentation, but if it's important to you, I can add it to the materials that is sent out later. Let me just make a note. Example of good one. Good background photos. Here I have a comment. Mine must be perfect. Mine is actually neutral on purpose. Then we have the about section, so the profile summary. The only difference, I mean, there are two differences between the profile summary on LinkedIn and on your CV. Difference number one is that there are less details in the profile summary on LinkedIn because of sensitive confidential data. And number two, the profile summary should be written for both the human and the applicant tracking system. So we need first a well-written USP that is well-written. And then we have a section called specialties or areas of expertise or highlights. And then we have a list of keywords one after another. Accomplishments. For some reason, the languages are an accomplishment. They used to have their own section many years ago. Here, as with the CVs, please do add your own native languages. That's a very common mistake. And as I've mentioned, profile summary, the best structure, first a unique profile summary, then keywords for the algorithm. So we have finance director with 10+ years in CE, etc., etc. And then you have areas and skills, finance, comma, strategy, comma, forecasting, comma, etc. So this is the section for the applicant tracking system. Okay, now how do you show, other than as an alternative to writing caps lock on your caps lock on your profile, I'm looking for a job. The alternative to that is to fill out the job seeking preferences. So you go to LinkedIn, to the settings, privacy, job seeking preferences, and please fill out all these sections if you can. And I mean, if the opportunity is there, use them. Here another question: what if you don't have a good level of your native language? Then at the level that you do have. LinkedIn gives you examples of allows you to select the appropriate level. Then once you have an, okay, before I continue, any questions do you have any questions about the profile on LinkedIn itself? I know I've rushed a little bit through that, but these are the basics. And if you're watching live on Facebook, if you have any questions, please use the comment section. Okay, there is a question: how do I get at least 50 people on my profile every week? First I would ask, why do you want to grow your network 50 people every week? First I wouldn't have this goal to say 50 people per week unless you get completely started. Okay, so I want orders freelance. That's an entirely different story. Catherine, we can discuss that during Q&A, okay? Okay, good. Anka, thank you for repeating your question. So Anka said, I was getting matched to the wrong jobs because of not having enough or proper keywords and description. Exactly. So I see you found your own answer. So if you are contacted, either if the algorithm matches you to lower positions than you're interested in, or if recruiters constantly get in touch with you with positions that you're not interested in, that means that you don't have enough keywords, and you need to improve the keywords on your profile. Definitely, yes. How big should the summary be in the about section? If you can use all 1,300 characters. It is not that much. LinkedIn here is restrictive. Use up the space. If you are good at copywriting, you can talk about and summarize, have a well-written bio, and then you have the keywords. Is it better to allow the here's the question: is it better to the question, Matteo's question, to rephrase it, is it better to have an open public profile, so for more people to be able to see you? If you are in active job hunting mode, then definitely yes. The only thing that I would do, I would have the profile public. The only thing that I'd hide are the details in its position, so that at least they have an incentive once they see, okay, this is probably somebody I could use for my research in my recruitment process, then so that they have an incentive to sending you at least a contact request. Next question: should the profile better be in English, or can it be in the national language, for example in German, as I'm not necessarily looking for an international position? In the countries where the local language is very important, that is German in Germany and Austria, that can be French in France. My recommendation, our recommendation here, is to have 2 profiles that is almost automatically translated by LinkedIn. You just, let's say, confirm the translations. There are still a lot of recruiters, and if somebody does the work diligently, they will search in 2 languages, but English is the most obvious one. So definitely make sure to have both profile languages. Can we write a series of keywords just like that? So translations, French, Swiss, French, transcript. Exactly. That's exactly how it works, Catherine. Good. Okay, Zara has asked the question. Zoom in, it shows my info from LinkedIn, but my LinkedIn is closed for public. Is that legal? It's very possible that this is a company, a website that, what's the word? Is it crawling? It's probably not legal, and they collect, they scrap information from different profiles. So that's probably not legal. Okay, good. Next, non-obvious job ads. So if you're actively looking for a job, obviously LinkedIn has a job section. What most don't know is that there are so-called non-obvious ads. LinkedIn is still location driven, so you can't say that we want candidates from 3 countries or anywhere in Europe, even with remote work being on the rise. So what does that then mean? That if you are based in Budapest and you're looking for a job in Budapest, it might mean that you also have to look through job ads in London, Vienna, Berlin, etc. To give an example here, for example, I think I need my afternoon coffee. So here we have Head of Risk and Controls, published in Munich, but is Bangkok based. Or we have Head of CDR, BDR, based in either Paris, Madrid, or Milan, but it was published in Paris. The majority of candidates don't think about looking for a job in Madrid, but looking through job ads in Paris. Why does it work that way? Because LinkedIn is expensive. That's it, it's expensive. So we know that, and by we, I mean Career Angels. So we do that search for you every single week. We click through all the job ads that are relevant for experienced managers and executives, and we find job ads that are really gems. We find the non-obvious job ads, etc. And I highly recommend everyone to go on to LinkedIn and find the group Hidden Job Market for Experienced Managers in Europe. And on Monday afternoon, we published a list. We also publish job ads that have been given to us through headhunters that are not published anywhere. And we publish job ads there that have been given to us directly by companies. Some of them are confidential, some of them are not, but it's definitely worth checking out. Okay. Now, if you want to optimize now that you know where to find job ads, you can also optimize your profile for job ads. Anka says, how do we find the hidden job market? When you go on LinkedIn and the search bar, type HJM hidden job market for, and it should come up. Otherwise, I'll make sure that Marcelina, when she's sending out the materials after the call, I'll mention to her to add the link to the hidden job market. Okay, so how do you optimize your LinkedIn profile for specific job ads that you're interested in? So there are four types of job ads, and the four types that you can encounter is actually a combination of, has the job poster included skills in the job ad? Yes or no? And Here you need a premium account and more than 10 applicants. If you have a premium account and there are more than 10 applicants, you have access to the 10 most important skills in that pool of candidates. So that gives us 4 different combinations. Number 1, no skills by the job poster and less than 10 candidates. Option number 2, no skills by job poster, more than 10 candidates, and yes and no and yes and yes. You get the, you know what I mean. So here an example. This is an example for number 2. So the job poster itself has not included any skills, but because of the fact that there are 101 applicants, I see the 10 skills and which I match. And this is an example of number 4, where I have both. On the left-hand side, should be, hold on, my mistake. On the left-hand side, you see 4 out of 10 skills match, which means this was posted by the job poster, and then how you mentioned see risk management, etc. That was the job poster, and I have 176 applicants, more than 10. So I see the list of the skills. So what you do, you research, you find job ads that are fairly similar, ideally approximately 10, and you copy paste the skills that you find onto an Excel spreadsheet. You then sort it and find the skills that are most often sought after. And then you do the next step. You add them to your profile before you apply. One thing you can do, and this is also one of the ways you can use this group, you can exchange skills endorsements. You can listen, out of those 50 skills, those are the top 10 skills that are most important to me. Could you please endorse these 10 skills, and I'll return the favor. Okay, so summarizing most important bits. Profile summary, first the human, then the keywords for the bot. You sprinkle the keywords across the profile. Research the job ads, add the skills, and ideally get them endorsed. And before we start with Q&A, and we're absolutely right on time, if you can think of friends, family, colleagues, former colleagues, please do spread the word of those open webinars. We have 2 more to come, module 3 and 4. And if you have joined us, during the second or third one, etc., you can see that they are very much independent from each other. If somebody wants to make up for lost modules or work ahead, we record everything and we then upload it to our YouTube channel. In the meantime, you can also follow Career Angels on LinkedIn. We have a blog where we publish almost every day. We have our guide on how to manage your career and job search during COVID. And we have a whole free material section on our website. I did mention the group on LinkedIn. I might add one more thing. It might seem that there's not that much happening on the LinkedIn group, but I have spoken to a couple of participants, and there's a lot happening that you can't see, especially in the background. People getting in touch, connecting, helping each other, confirming skills, etc., etc. We've also started a group on Facebook. And if you think this was valuable, please do continue supporting our crowdfunding by PayPal, via PayPal. We'll very much appreciate that. Okay, good. How else you can say thank you? We've just launched our YouTube channel, so you can subscribe to it. You can follow our page on Facebook, do the same on LinkedIn. You can engage with our content. And last but not least, you can tell your friends to do exactly the same. Okay, good. So Q&A. What questions do you have? I see lots of people typing. When LinkedIn summarizes my skills, is it taken from the description that I add to my profile or from the endorsements? When LinkedIn summarizes my skills. Here I need when matching me with a job. Okay, that's what you mean. It's taken from everywhere. So LinkedIn, when matching it to job ads, it looks at your past behavior, what you have applied to, the keywords in your profile. They look at the skills that your network has endorsed you for. So it looks at the whole, at the entire profile. I think Catherine had some questions. Could you, Catherine, could you repost your question, please? What can you do when you have a current gap in employment? How do you present it in your CV or LinkedIn so the candidate is not automatically rejected due to the gap? Here, a follow-up question. How long is that gap? One year. Okay, good. If you have a 1 year gap, add the gap to your profile. So actually say, that you have been on a sabbatical for a year and that you're off sabbatical starting April this year or something. And then if there is something you can show for, add what exactly it was that you've been doing during this gap. Is it professional development, personal development courses you have attended? If it's something specific, or if you have not done that, my recommendation, go on to LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, Coursera, and start courses so you can add them to the LinkedIn profile, to the description. So it gives the impression that you have used the last 12 months for your professional development and you have not disconnected from the job market. I hope that helps, Magda. Okay, so Catherine asks, how do I get more traffic on my profile? Okay, this is why you want to kind of aggressively increase your network, right? How do I use search engine optimization? Okay, so I think those are two different topics. One is how do you increase your network, let's say by 50 people. So if you want, for example, for business development purposes, or as it's now called, social selling, if you want to use your LinkedIn profile for that, my recommendation is to prepare a target list, prepare a list of people that could be your potential prospects, send them a contact request, and those could be up to 200 per day. And in connecting with them, tell them what it is or why you want to get in touch with them. So I'd be upfront here. And if there's something of value that you can offer, do that. For example, we are now reaching out to HR directors for Europe and EMEA with a special HR edition of our market signals of what's been going on in the last 2 months. And while I'm sending out the contract request and saying, listen, I regularly prepare summary reports on the job market. If you're interested, I'm happy to send you the reports. And then they say yes or no. So out of those 200 contact requests, anywhere between 10, 20, 30% might reply. You get their email address, you start engaging, and sooner or later you start building a pipeline of potential clients. It does help if there is something of value that you can offer to engage with them. Allow me to move on to the job hunting questions, if that's okay. Tilak asks, if we have too many skills, digital certificates on our LinkedIn profile, is it still good or a bit too much? How many is too many skills? Can you have too many digital certificates? 7, it's not too many. It's again keywords, especially if you move them at the very end when you have courses. Right now, the way LinkedIn shows the courses, it's basically a list of titles. So don't worry about that. Sandra, is there a minimal font size to use in the CV? Yes, I'd say the minimum is Arial 10. Okay. Next question. Does automatic software detect gaps in employment and rejects candidate based on that? I don't believe they do that. It is more about detecting keywords in the profile. Plus, if you add sabbatical, it's not a gap. It actually means you've been doing something. A managing partner has contacted me on LinkedIn. He was also connected with the owner of my previous company. What could I write to him if I'm interested in the position at his company? Oh, that's a nice question. How I would approach it is the way I'd approach it is to reach out and say, listen, I can see that you're connected to the owner of my previous company. Can I reach out to you confidentially, as there might be a conflict of interest? Maybe. Engage with that person. And then if he says, yes, it's okay, there's no conflict of interest, please go ahead. Then I can listen, I'm thinking about changing my job, attaches my CV. What do you think? Do you see there's an opportunity with XYZ company, etc.? So I'd approach it in 2 steps. Carolina asks, where do you put the information on languages? You find languages under achievements. So you look for achievements. So achievement section, and then you have a couple of options, and one of them is languages. Okay, one more person typing up a question. In the meantime, I'll continue answering Catherine's question about the search engine optimization. I'd go here, I'd say, look, research your target group, see what kind of keywords they would use to find somebody like you, and then add it to your profile. Okay, 2 more people are typing. If you're on Facebook and you have a question, you can post your question in the comment section. Okay, Karina has found it. How does easy apply work on LinkedIn? Is it different from applying on company websites? Okay. Easy Apply uses your LinkedIn profile to apply, so you don't go through a website. There's no applicant tracking system. There's the LinkedIn algorithm, and it allows you to attach the CV to the application. So from a recruiter's perspective, what we see, because I use that tool, we look for career angels using LinkedIn for career consultants. And there what we then see is a ranking of candidates. And then we see who has attached the CV. We double click on it. So the applicant tracking, the LinkedIn algorithm mimics an ATS, but it only uses what's on the profile and not in the attached CV. I hope that answers your question. Krunal. Okay. Any other questions you might have? Okay. I believe we have more questions in the first edition. That's why I was rushing a bit. No, Facebook is silent. Okay, 4 people are typing no. Okay. From how many months on you need to explain the gap in your CV, especially if you are actively looking for jobs since the beginning of the year? It's May. That's a tough question. Did you still have a job in January? Because one thing that you could do is, okay, so if somebody was employed until January 2020, then you could delete the month and say until 2020 and have it as a question mark. Say, okay, did they stop working in January, February, March, or maybe April? I've also been active looking for this year, but I guess Corona again. Okay, so from how many months do you have to explain your gap in your CV? Half a year upwards, I'd say. Depending on how stable your career track record was before. It's difficult for me to give here a really clear black and white answer. Okay, Catherine says, but if you apply on LinkedIn and not per mail, some of the candidates who pay may see your profile, then it would be better to apply per email, wouldn't it? But if you apply on LinkedIn and not by email, some candidates who pay may see your profile. Catherine, I'm not sure I understand your question. Email. Okay, Catherine, but if you apply on LinkedIn and not per email, some other candidates who pay may see your profile. Then it would be better to apply per email, wouldn't it? There's an option for Prima. I think that they can see the profiles of the competition. No. You can't see the competing applicants. That's not possible even if you pay for it. You can only see the skills that the others have. You can see what I showed you before, the type of education they have, etc. But you will never see the candidate pool that you're competing against, even if you pay. Okay, Arzu says 7 years no gap, which means, yeah, I think if I were you, I'd add or I'd justify a gap, which again now with COVID is a bit tricky because COVID surprised every one of us. Yeah, that's a tough one. 7 years and then a break. It's May. Yeah, I don't see the need. Everybody knows what happened, and the fact that your job search takes longer is absolutely normal. So I wouldn't worry yet about that. Okay, here a comment. I have a 10-year gap. I filled it with being a family manager. There you go. Okay, if there are no more questions, I think I haven't missed. Oh no, I did miss one question. Hold on. I saw it, but then the other. Any internship you do during your MBA, should you add it in your work experience or education? Since I'm still studying, I would definitely add it to your experience and make sure it's clear that this is an MBA internship. Okay, good. So thanks a lot for joining today. Okay, one last thing. Should I publish certificates like exploration into mindfulness? Well, if you are an HR trainer and you work on soft skills, then maybe yes. Otherwise, ask yourself, is this certificate relevant for your target group? If yes, then add it. If it's not relevant, then don't add it. Okay, so thank you so much for joining today. This was the second module of the second edition. We have 2 more modules to go. Next week, we'll be speaking about how to contact your potential bosses, how to prepare a list of companies, what exactly to write to a headhunter, how to get interviewed, how inbox management works, what kind of KPIs there are, response rate, interview rate, etc., etc. And the fourth one will be about interviewing. So very exciting. Thanks again for joining. I hope you enjoyed it, and I see a lot of thank you. So thank you so much, and for the interaction. And Marcelina will make sure to send you the link to the hidden job market and examples of good background photos. Okay, thank you. Have a nice afternoon. Bye.
Hi, thank you for watching our material. If you found it interesting and you'd like to see more, subscribe below. If you do not want to watch recordings but actually want to join live, find us on Facebook. See you next time.